During this session, we shall be discussing about the philosophy of the marginalized. It's an important topic when we talk about philosophy, particularly in the Indian context. I have with me two experts to discuss on this very important topic. To my left, we have Dr. S. Lodhanathan. He is head of the Department of Philosophy at Airul Anand College in Madurai, which is with the Madurai Kamaraj University. He has about 23 years of experience of teaching philosophy, and his area of specialization is Indian social philosophy of liberalization, and he is a specialist on Ambedkar and Dalit studies. To my right, we have Dr. Silvaraj. He is a professor of philosophy at Loyola College, Chennai. He has a PhD in philosophy, and his area of specialization again is Dalit consciousness. He has done his studies from Loyola University in Chicago. As I said in the beginning, our topic of discussion this afternoon is on philosophy of the marginalized. So to begin with, I would request Dr. Lodhanathan to kindly explain to us about the meaning and relevance of the philosophy of the marginalized.
Thank you, Professor Thomas. The question of the philosophy of the marginalized refers to important sense. We need to take into account the connotative dimension of the question of marginalized and the denotative dimension of the marginalized. Specifically, with reference to the Indian context, the question of marginalized applies to the issue of the Dalits. Dalit connotatively means something, denotatively it means something. Connotatively it means the issue of suffering, the sensibility of unjust suffering met to the people who are called Dalits. Denotatively it means refers to the category of the people. Thus, philosophy of the marginalized, specifically with reference to the people who are called Dalits, has got two important philosophical significance. On the one side, it is a response to the problem of unjust exploitation. And the other side, it's a struggle for a liberative philosophy. In that sense, what is the philosophical significance with Dalit philosophy of liberation? That is, it problematizes the very issue called philosophy of liberation within the Indian philosophical context. In that way, philosophy of the marginalized, especially with reference to the Dalit category of people, in the context of casteism and patriarchy, becomes vital within our Indian cultural context.
Well, thank you, Dr. Lodhanathan. Having spoken about the relevance of the philosophy of the marginalized, perhaps Dr. Silvaraj could highlight on what is meant by the identity of a Dalit.
Thank you, Professor Thomas. When we speak of an identity of marginalized people, especially with reference to Dalits, we mean the identity comes out of a consciousness which constructs one's identity. That is basically a consciousness which is constructed through experience. So this is basically Dalit experience becomes the embodiment of a Dalit consciousness and Dalit identity. Then we need to know what is Dalit experience. You know, the central experience of Dalit is one of a social exclusion. Exclusion in various aspects of life, social, political, economic, cultural, religious. So everywhere they feel they are excluded from the main society. So that is a basic reality, that is a basic experience of the collective community called Dalit. That is where they form their consciousness, and this consciousness forms the identity. when I speak of identity, there are 2-3 ways of understanding identity. That is how I am looked at by others, and how I am, and what I want others to know me, or how I want others to know me. So Dalit identity basically means how I want others to know me, or how I want others to know who I am. So that is basically Dalit identity. From the experiences, what we see, Dalits are looked at as a dirty thing. When Jaya Subramanian explains in the school and in the colleges, when people know that she is a Dalit, an SC student, her own peers look at her as a dirty thing. And again, when Esumarian speaks of a Dalit identity, some 3 areas majorly these people are discriminated against. That is their right to land, a right to education, and a right to housing. These are the 3 major areas where Dalits are discriminated, and this embodies the whole life of Dalits. And again, when we say Dalit identity, we mean how these people are thrown out of the society. So Dalit identity from the point of view of the Dalits is one of brokenness, is one of thrown awayness. This is how Dalit identity is there. But as a category of people, now they can test this identity. Now we are not just thrown out of the society, we are the people who would like to empower ourselves. So it's basically the dialectic between being thrown away and also being empowering oneself.
Well, having heard from these 2 experts about the meaning of marginalized people, the identity of the marginalized, it gives us a feeling that a topic like the marginalized, when we talk in the context of philosophy, it makes it very easy for us to understand that it is not a difficult subject. And given that background, we as academics as well as students in various disciplines must take extra interest to learn the subject of philosophy in its various contexts. Now, coming back to our topic of discussion, let us try to understand the factors that are necessary for constructing Dalit consciousness. Perhaps Dr. Luthanathan could start the discussion.
That's an interesting question. The question of what are those factors that go to construct the Dalit consciousness. There should be multiple factors that go to constitute or construct the Dalit consciousness. Probably to simplify, we can classify these principles that constitute the Dalit consciousness in terms of 2 important aspects, the internal and the external. By the internal, I mean the consciousness that is being constructed by various factors, philosophical factors themselves. By external, I mean the cultural factors that go to constitute the Dalit consciousness. So it becomes a very relevant inquiry in philosophy to consider the philosophy of the marginalized from the standpoint of the Dalits. The internal factors, for example, we need to account the Dalit consciousness at 2 levels. Consciousness as subjugated, consciousness as dominated, consciousness as domesticated, consciousness as oppressed. Another level of consciousness with reference to Dalits, the Dalit consciousness or the consciousness of the subjugated people. One is their consciousness is subjugated, another one the consciousness of the subjugated against this subjugation. That is, in other words, there is a double negation process that operates in the philosophical setting of the question of Dalit consciousness. It negates the very negation. Whatever philosophy, whatever social reality, whatever cultural factor, whatever economic, political factors or historical factors that went into constitute the whole context of caste domination and heavily laid shouldered on the shoulders of the Dalits as untouchables, has to be what we call eroded. So Dalit consciousness is a moment of restoration of those consciousness that has been subjectivized or objectivized. So in that sense, I would look at the question of Dalit consciousness from these two angles, the internal and the external. The internal from two aspects, consciousness as subjugated consciousness and consciousness that works against the very subjugations in the layers, in the history or in the layers of Indian philosophical cultural tradition. Probably the external dimension, Selva could highlight that.
Thank you, Dr. Loganathan. Now, we just now saw how the internally a person personalizes that kind of consciousness. There are also certain factors which influence constructing Dalit consciousness at the external level. One of them is material prosperity. A consciousness constructed based upon one's material life, how rich or how poor, what type of a society he lives in, whether in a very poor locality, in a slum, or in a what you call in a colony, or he lives in a very posh area. So these external realities also influence constructing Dalit consciousness. Now also there are other external factors like the cultural symbols, the art, the dance, the music, which make a great impact upon constructing Dalit consciousness. When I was talking to Dr. Jayakaran, who was the director of Dalit Resource Center in Madurai, he was saying that we use culture as the symbol of Dalit liberation. Culture can be used as a symbol of Dalit liberation. And he said at two levels. One is, this first empowers the person through cultural expressions. When we beat the parai, beat the parai, the drum, the sound, the music, the rhythm, that makes a sense of a belonging, a sense of empowered self within the person. So that constructs a Dalit consciousness. Again, he also said, through these cultural symbols, Madurai is a place where they come every year for a cultural night, Dalit cultural night, where it brings different communities of Dalit origin, different groups. They come there, they leave aside all the differences, then feel one there as Dalit unity, as a unified group. So that also constructs the Dalit consciousness. So far, who understood himself or herself as a disempowered self feels that this collective consciousness is taking place there. So this way, this cultural symbols play a very crucial role in constructing Dalit consciousness. I don't want to deal with so many other things, but these two are very major things besides the location. The other also decides, so who is my opponent? Who is my enemy? He also decides upon me, also impacts upon me what type of consciousness I construct. So that's also very important. So the other also decides and determines what type of a consciousness I construct within me. Is a submissive consciousness or liberative consciousness?
Well, Professor, I have one more question to you. Can you briefly explain the social profile of Dalit problem?
Yeah, the social profile is very, very important for a Dalit, because these are a kind of major agents or major stimulant where Dalit consciousness is constructed. It's like a lab where a person constructs his own consciousness either in the submissive side or in the liberative side or the assertive side. I'll give just one example what happened in a small village in Ramnath district near Madurai, Irinjirai. Basically a Dalit who went to a washerman to wash his clothes and press it. But that particular washerman does the whole work for the caste people, not for the Dalit people. So when he went and then gave the cloth, he said, I am not doing. Then he asked him, well, I am also paying the money that you need, but why don't you do it for me? So that washerman, he went to the other communities and then told them that this is what he says. So immediately they caught hold of him, his parents, his children, his wife, and then they beat him up thoroughly. From then, such a social boycott was imposed upon the village, upon the whole Dalit community, and especially on this person, that they found very difficult to live. Now, one small incident triggers off all other aspects of a Dalit life. Socially, the whole community boycotted them, and the religious space was just taken away from them. And then the economic, the people would not be given any job, because the Dalit people, they were always depending on the dominant caste people there for their day-to-day life existence. Now, everything is denied. So, how one incident embodies the whole gamut of Dalit oppression, Dalit discrimination. So this is a very good example where Dalit constructs. But this person, he did not kind of border upon submissive consciousness. He went to the press, he went to the police, he went to the DSP, and then the collector brought out the issue, which means he did not want to buy the submissive consciousness as the given. But he wanted to create his own liberative consciousness, his own assertive consciousness. He tried to assert his space, socially, economically, politically, religiously, even culturally. So this is the way a person constructs a submissive consciousness or an oppressive consciousness. So this, I find this is a very good example for that.
Professor Luna, then, how do you conceptualize the philosophy of liberation with reference to the Dalits?
Now that's important project with the very enabling of Dalit consciousness in terms of the question of liberation. I think the whole issue of philosophy of liberation of the Dalits in terms of helping themselves, helping this Indian social context, the caste discriminated society, I think they project a serious sensibility, a philosophy of liberation. Now the whole philosophy of liberation has to be understood from the point of view of a philosophy of domination. Dalit as people, I told at the beginning, their consciousness has been subjugated by both internal and external factors, which means there is a strong philosophy, culturally, historically, to some major extent philosophically, dominated their consciousness and allowed them to suffer a sense of subjugated consciousness. In other words, there is a specific sense of a philosophy of domination that is operative within the context of caste with reference to the Dalit category as people. What is this philosophy of domination? How do I look at the whole issue of philosophy of domination within the Indian cultural context? Say, for example, the caste context, what Professor Selvaraj was telling about. I look at the whole principle like this. Between two people within Indian caste culture, X and Y, the X, the individual self, has been historically, philosophically construed as a superior self. You call it in different terms. You call it the singular self, you call it the dual self, the Prakriti and the Purusha, or you call it the individual self in different terminologies. In other words, the X category is construed philosophically as a superior category as against the Y category as an inferior category, the secondary category. So there is a category which is constructed as the primary, and there is a category which is constructed philosophically as a secondary category. Between this X and Y category, there has been philosophical justifications, which we call the whole metaphysical question. We have metaphysics that upheld monistic principle, the primacy of the superiority of the self. We have metaphysics in terms of dualistic category, the primacy of the self and the secondary position of the matter. In other words, to the consciousness of the Dalits, in terms of constructing a philosophy of liberation, this question of the logic of domination is a serious issue which is to be considered in philosophy. Not only the Dalit question is a social question, the Dalit question is not only a cultural question, the Dalit question is a seriously philosophical question from the point of view of the logic that constructs a serious sense of slavery, a serious sense of domination. What is this logic of domination? That between X and Y, between this X principle and Y principle, X principle has been metaphysically, culturally construed as the dominant principle, as and against the Y principle as the to be dominated principle, which means X is culturally invested, assumes a sense of power over Y. Y, I refer the Dalit category, the women of the patriarchy, the Dalit within the caste category, the common within the professional category. Therefore, there is a logic of domination, the Dalit consciousness against the subjugation has to be worked out. So the first principle within the whole construction of a philosophy of liberation with reference to the Dalit question of liberation is to take into account what are those philosophical principles that constitute this sense of domination. I think that's a very serious inquiry into the entire gamut of philosophy. There's a very serious ongoing research inquiry that has to be taken into account to constitute the whole question of what are those philosophical principles that keeps them under consciousness slavery. I am not just talking about the slavery in terms of untouchability, which is a serious problem, but slavery in terms of consciousness constituted within the Indian philosophical constraint. I think the Dalit philosophy as a philosophy of the marginalized with reference to suggesting a philosophy of liberation problematizes the very philosophical constructs themselves. It is a metaphysics against metaphysics. It's a kind of a search for a logic of liberation against the logic of domination. The logic of liberation or the principles of liberation that goes to constitute the question of Dalit liberation is not exclusively for the Dalit people. In fact, they need to appreciate, understand the Dalit category not in the sense of a reference to a caste category. Dalit means an anti-caste category. Dalit is not categorization of caste category. Dalit refers to against any social discrimination. In that way, Dalit is a discourse that X and Y needs to be what we call brought under for a discussion. Therefore, it's not a discussion of a particular category, class of people, that it is their interest. And it's the interest of the common person. It's the interest of the academicians, it is the interest of the professional, because the Dalit looks at the issue of domination, that both X is dominated or subjugated because his consciousness is subjugated within the metaphysics of domination, and Y is also consciousness is dominated within the metaphysics of the slave domination. Therefore, the question of philosophy of liberation takes into account seriously the philosophical principles that go to constitute, justify, sanctify the philosophies of domination. This is on the one side of it. There are other principles that needs to be accounted. For example, the question of identity which Professor Selvaraj was discussing. From the point of view of Dalit reality, Dalit philosophy of liberation, identity is no more singular. Self is no more individual, and the question of liberation is no more individual liberation in terms of individual mukti. The Dalit looks at the whole question of liberation totally from a different angle. That's why I said the Dalit search within the area of philosophy is to problematize the very philosophy. So it's a very insightful search, very needed search, and a socially relevant search within the philosophical dimensions. In that sense, the question of identity for the Dalits is plural. Identity, he looks at it not as a singular caste category of this X, Y category. Identity is a relational category. Dalit is a relational category. Dalit is a collective category. In other words, it works towards a communitarian plurality of selves as identities. In that sense of relationality, I think the whole context of a philosophy of liberation of the Dalits has to be located. And that is a very serious search that has to be taken into account.
Well, Professor Lourdes, you have spoken also about some aspects of the principles, and I would definitely request Dr. Selvaraj to clearly tell us about some of the basic principles that construct the philosophy of liberation.
Yeah, it's very important from where Dr. Lourdes stopped. From the foregoing discussions, we clearly know the movement from submissive consciousness to assertive consciousness, or what we call liberative consciousness. So this is the clear movement we have to see with regard to Dalit consciousness, construction of Dalit consciousness. Now, what are the agents, or what are the principles that really construct this assertive or liberative consciousness? From my own research, I've come across 4 important agents or principles that construct collective liberative Dalit consciousness. One is education. When I was talking to people, making surveys, everybody said education is the master key to Dalit liberation. Education is the master key to Dalit empowerment. It means education operates at a two level. At the material level, it operates a clear vehicle for social mobility. When Dalits are deprived of any other possessions, the only vehicle for them to social mobility is education. And also at the second level, it creates a critical consciousness within them. How I am, why I am, and where should I move? So this kind of a questions it raises. Education does that. That is why people said that education becomes the master key to Dalit liberation, to Dalit liberative consciousness. Then second one is a sense of history, Dalit history. Now, most of the problems for the people is because they do not know who they are. They do not know where they come from. They do not know why they are here now. So, a clear sense of history, a historical consciousness creates in them an empowered self. Now, this is what I am. I have been in this status because of somebody else. So, I have to protest. I have to resist it. So a sense of history brings a collective liberative consciousness of the Dalits. Then also you have got the social movements. Social movements play a very crucial role in constructing especially collective consciousness, because a Dalit as an individual feels himself as a submissive being. But when he is related to other people in terms of a social movements, when they come together and then see that they are a big group, and they have power, they have potential. So this mobilization or social movements becomes the embodiment of a Dalit power. And then related to that is a Dalit leadership. Dalit leadership, even after 60 years, now today Dalits speak of Dr. Ambedkar, because he becomes embodiment of an ideal leadership for Dalit emancipation, for Dalit empowerment. And also today you see a lot of leadership coming up from every state. Now you take UP. Now it is Kanshiram who gave a sense of political identity to the people, and that is a kind of a powerful tool, a powerful collective tool, collective Dalit self. And then we also see a kind of people coming together as a power. It is not, I am not sitting alone, I am not standing alone, but I am connected to people. Now I am not one, I am many. So this sense of collective self gives them a power to protest, gives them a power to assert, gives them a power to demand. So it's no more kind of begging, it's no more kind of getting for some concessions, but it is claiming for my right, it is claiming for my share. And all this happen in a collective manner. And social movements play a very crucial role, and leadership is a kind of a stimulant factor to bring people together. That's why all the cultural festivals, village festivals, or social festivals, protest movements, all these kind of means of bringing people together to feel this collective self within them. So these are some of the collective, these are agents which create, construct collective Dalit consciousness in the subordinated community.
Well, I think we'll get into some of the questions that the audience are interested in asking, and we start with Dr. Pushparaj.
The cultural, the national and the social problem has been philosophized very much, and you have brought out the need for philosophization or creating new metaphysics backing up the cultural movement liberation. While Dr. Loganathan was bringing out this, some two aspects came. One, identity of plurality will have to be created. The other, you said, if I am right, that the philosophy of the self as against matter itself is causing this question of bondage. It is perhaps on the second point I have little reservation, because even from Plato's time, self versus matter, soul versus the non-soul has been there, but there such a problem has not arisen. But only in India it has arisen. Therefore, is it the problem of the philosophy or is it the problem of the use of philosophy? I will be happy to get clarified.
Thank you, Dr. Pushparajan. I think the whole question boils on the philosophies that promoted the dualism, which I call philosophies in terms of dichotomy. Dichotomy by very nature dichotomizes one's consciousness. That which dichotomizes, that which classifies, cannot in any way promote a relation. If it promotes relation, it can only promote a relation in terms of the primary in relation to the secondary by a mode of subordination. That means the secondary is called to subordinate itself to the primary, which you may call it the spirit. The secondary you may call it the matter, which normally in any philosophical discussion, we have very interesting discussion on that. Therefore, any philosophy, metaphysically speaking, that constructs an ontology of binary opposition, I think there is a Dalit philosophy has enough space for a serious sense of suspicion. A suspicion not in a sense of that I don't like it, but a suspicion in the sense of going beyond these binaries where we can embrace a sense of beyond binary, a sense of collectivity, a sense of relationality, without attributing itself or that self, without confining oneself to this category or that category. And that's why I said a philosophy of liberation within the perspective of the Dalits is an attempt to the question of constructing the consciousness of the very culture which promoted a culture of domination. That means it invites both the Dalits and the so-called the non-Dalit in the same ground in terms of relationality, not in terms of exclusive oppositional binary categories of understanding. So that's why I said the Dalit philosophy of liberation is not oppositional in character, rather it is embracive, relational in terms of going beyond the binaries, not taking one binary, one set of category against the other. So in that way, it calls for, it bargains for a political, philosophical, democratic space which has been constrained by the ontology of domination, ontological presence of various ontologies. So that is a very interesting invitation the Dalit philosophy puts forward for a serious research and reflection. From that sense, I would account for that.
Okay, shall we go to the second question?
I want to ask a question that what should be the role of the philosophy of marginalized or the Dalits or the folk that is in introducing in the educational curriculums? What should be the role of it?
Philosophy, as of now, is a classroom exercise, mostly. Whether it is applied directly to life, we have a question. But when we introduce the philosophy of the marginalized, be it Dalits or tribals or women or the coastal people, so it immediately relates to life. So philosophical problems are looked at from a sociological point of view, from a cultural point of view, from a political point of view, and everything looked at from an existential point of view. I think that is where philosophy makes sense. Philosophy does not stop with a classroom exercise, but goes out there with the people, look at the realities of life, and then understand how meaningful your philosophy can be with their life. So you brush shoulder with the people, and then can you come out with? And most of the time we think that wisdom exists only with some intellectuals. But you go down, you talk to people, when they narrate their stories, you see the wisdoms, you see the meaning of life, how they struggle through, and how they sustain their life in spite of the subordination, oppression, discrimination. That is where philosophy makes sense when you do philosophy from the marginalized communities.
My question is, the Dalit consciousness is certainly one that empowers, and therefore it is a necessity in society. But once empowered, can Dalit consciousness become a barrier for the Dalit to merge into the mainstream of social life? if a classless society is taken as the ideal, can the Dalit merge into that classless society after he is empowered? Thank you.
Perhaps you could briefly give a...
To put it very sharply, the question of empowerment from a philosophical point of view, from the Dalit philosophical liberative point of view, empowerment at immediate level is the empowerment of the Dalits. Looking at the whole question of domestication, domination, from the philosophy of marginalization, I think empowerment is also has to be looked into from this X category. So it is not that we are doing something good for the Dalits. Rather, the Dalit question problematizes those philosophies that disempower those people who think that they are empowered. Therefore, Dalit philosophy is not exclusive category for Dalits alone. It's an inclusive, democratic area where everybody missed to reflect, which is very important, socially relevant. So empowerment for the Dalits is important socially, but empowerment in terms of consciousness is very vital, very important, very significant, both for the Dalits and the non-Dalit philosophical seeking.
I have two questions.
Yes.
One is, what's the role of religion in the philosophy of Dalit liberation?
Yeah.
And in your exposition, you said it does play a role in bringing about a collective consciousness among Dalits. But is that the only role that religion plays, or is there anything beyond that religion can play? Secondly, Antonio Gramsci speaks about the role of organic intellectuals to lead the oppressed people, the subalterns, from contradictory consciousness to critical consciousness.
Yeah.
In what way do you think that Dalit intellectuals today can play this role?
Yeah. As I said, religion brings the people and then gives them the collective consciousness. I also said, so it also creates a critical consciousness. See, religion can be a highly status quoist understanding. You can have it, but also can have a very critical consciousness because how it plays. So one religion can give you a kind of a status quoist type of a consciousness where everything is the whole question of theory of karma, or you call the fatalism. Now, I am because it is being imposed upon me, God has given me. But at the same time, you also see some of the things that ask questions. Why I am so? Is that then you understand the whole understanding of God, how God for me, or who God is for me. So these are the questions which the collective consciousness raises. I am not, as an individual, I may look at myself as a kind of subordinated being, submissive being. I have nothing to move ahead. This is what I am and I have to live with this. But at the same time, when we understand religion or when we understand God as someone who liberates me, when we understand religion as something as embodiment of my liberation, my elevated being, then it already raises a question in me. If religion is this, then why am I? So it already raises a question. And that is where the search becomes, and that is where the consciousness becomes. That's why the same event can bring total submissive consciousness to one person, and on the other hand, a completely assertive consciousness in the other person, because how I look at it. And religion plays a very crucial role to look at it either as a status quoist world or as a kind of world that needs a change. Leadership exactly meant Anthony Gramsci's organic intellectual. It is not a political leaders that you see who go with a lot of promises, who go with slogans, but a leader who makes the people think, who makes the people to act, who brings the people together and then initiates a collective search, initiates a collective question, and also encourages them to find their own answers. So this is the type of leadership. So you don't move from submissive consciousness immediately to liberative consciousness, but there is a process between them. The same person can be very liberative at one incident and can be very submissive at another incident. It's not a kind of reality just out there, but it's more of the process, more of the dynamism that is between the person and between persons. So that is where the leadership becomes very, very important. It is the organic leadership that can create assertive consciousness.
I am Nishant, Professor of Philosophy, JDV Pune. I would like to thank both the experts, Professor Lodhanathan and Professor Selvaraj, for the enlightening discussion we had. And particularly impressed by the philosophical root problem that Professor Lodhanathan has highlighted, the metaphysics that has led to some binary opposition privileging one over the other, how that has been detrimental to any such philosophy of the marginalized. Therefore, my question would be, should not somehow we deconstruct metaphysics itself, not only just to create a philosophy of the marginalized, but also to liberate philosophy itself?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was telling. Dalit philosophy, or the philosophy of the marginalized, within our Indian cultural context, is an important movement. In that sense, it problematizes what has been constructed as philosophy. It problematizes what has been constructed as metaphysics, what has been constructed as ethics, what has been constructed as epistemology. Not in way of throwing out, but in way of exposing the layers that went to justify the domination of a sect, of a particular construct against the so-called the weaker, the fragile. So it is not just in favor of the fragile, namely Dalits, but in favor of the entire community in terms of collectivity. That's why the philosophy of the marginalized is not the exclusive category of the marginalized people. Again, it will be a reductionism. So it is an invitation to the sense of collectivity.
Well, I think we'll have to close our discussion today here.